Everybody to this strategic conversation. I'm Jamie Shea, Senior Fellow at Friends of Europe, speaking to you from Brussels, from our special conference centre, Town Hall Europe. And I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome as my special guest, Pedro Serrano, who is currently the head of cabinet of the EU High Representative and Vice President for the Common Foreign and Security Policy of the European Union, Josep Borrell. But Pedro did not come to Brussels with the High Representative because he's been here already for some years, where he has occupied a number of senior positions in the European External Action Service. He helped to set it up, and he is known in Brussels as one of the shapers and drivers of the EU's attempt to become a greater geostrategic and geopolitical actor on the world stage. So, Pedro, thank you so much for accepting our invitation today. We have 20 minutes. It's going to be very short, and we'll try to cover a lot of ground because obviously a lot of things are happening in the world. And my first question goes to this ambition of the EU to become a more geopolitical actor, a more forceful one on the world stage, a more assertive one. President Macron yesterday, speaking to students in Vilnius, Lithuania, also articulated that aspiration. And we've heard a lot, of course, both from the High Representative and Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the EU Commission. But aspirations are one thing, achievements are another. So 1 year since the new leadership has taken over and this new geopolitical ambition has been articulated, how much real progress have we made? What would you see have been the accomplishments? Have we been able to come up with different formulas for a more effective EU common foreign and security policy? Are there other fixes like majority voting, which is often sort of called for, which could help in the future? So again, welcome, and I now hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Pleasure to be here and to address Friends of Europe. This has been quite a momentous year with huge challenges, and not least of all the COVID pandemic that we have had to face, which has also geostrategic consequences and requires also a broad international response. And what have been the achievements? First, I think we have to say that we are facing very complicated times and challenging times in the immediate vicinity of Europe. The whole neighborhood of Europe is in a very difficult state. Certainly in the Middle East, with the Syria war still unfinished, with challenges between Iran, Saudi Arabia, Arab kingdoms, Turkey that has become a very assertive partner as well, regional partner. And the situation in Eastern Europe, which also is very complex. The Ukraine crisis continues. We're having now a Belarus crisis. In the south, we are still facing huge challenges with Libya crisis and relative instability, and certainly a lot of instability in the Sahel region. So the challenges that surround Europe are probably greater than they have been in the past. And the geopolitical and geostrategic challenges have also increased, with the tension notably between China and the United States increasing, also warmed by the COVID pandemic, but much broader type of issue. So we are in complex times. And in these complex times, it is clear I think certainly for the European Union, I think for all member states of the European Union, that it is working together and using this extraordinary platform for cooperation that the European Union is, in order to bring together their capacities and energies and respond to these challenges. And this is what we've been trying to do. And certainly the COVID response is an example of this. And the more than 100 decisions that have been taken very quickly, one after the other, at full speed, bringing together 27 nations in responding to something that was unprecedented, certainly in our historic time lines and lifetime. It has been quite extraordinary. The capacity to mobilize the expertise, funds to coordinate opening and closing of borders. Yes, there have been hiccups. Yes, there are problems, but the overall response has been very effective. And the solidarity that the European Union has shown, also mobilizing financial means in order to support member states and even supporting countries abroad and rejigging our external programs of assistance to third countries to respond to that, I think is quite an extraordinary achievement as such. For the rest, the world is what it is, and we are responding to the challenges that are coming, trying to address as best as we can situations in Eastern Mediterranean, engaging in Libya. I think the deployment of Operation Irini is a symbol of certainly what we're trying of engagement and addressing problems as they come, and very clear responses to challenges in Eastern Europe, very clear messages to leaderships of the biggest nations in the world. I think the last the summit with China was also an example of setting clearly what are the European Union interests and what is it that we want to establish as a basis for the relationship with China, which is fundamental. Talking about achievements in foreign policy, as you know better than I do, Jamie, is
it's a process sometimes, yes, and a long one here.
But I think we are addressing the challenges. We are responding to these challenges, and we have put in place different mechanisms that are delivering results. And of course, everything can be improved, and a lot of work remains ahead, and the challenges are still there, and we have to continue. But I think we have to look at the year gone by as a year where the European Union has shown that it is capable and that it has the tools that are required to respond to these challenges.
Pedro, thanks. One of the things I've written about this week in my weekly article for Friends of Europe is this interesting return of US diplomacy to Europe. As you know, the last few years, we've tended more to lament the lack of US interest in NATO, at least from the current administration. The withdrawal of US troops. But suddenly we have Secretary of State Pompeo in Greece looking as if he's pushing Greece and Turkey towards talks over the Eastern Mediterranean, US taking a stand on Belarus, the US hosting a meeting in Washington between the Serbs and the Kosovars. Do you welcome this sort of re-engagement of US diplomacy in Europe? Is it helpful to what you're trying to do with the High Representative? Or is there a fear that maybe the US is operating on a sort of separate track and this could sort of complicate rather than simplify life?
Well, the United States has been and is a fundamental partner for all Europeans, for the European Union. Most of our member states are allies with the United States in NATO, and therefore engaging with the United States and U.S. engagement in the affairs of Europe has been part of our security architecture. And from that perspective, we do welcome, of course, interest and engagement of the United States in European affairs. And we hope that it will continue and that we will continue also coordinating closely with the United States on all these issues. There's no doubt that on the Serbia-Kosovo dialogue, the United States has a lot of positive things to bring. And therefore, and this applies as well to the overall relationship with Eastern Europe and the positions of the United States there. So I think overall U.S. engagement is welcomed. And stronger coordination and cooperation with the US is always as well welcomed, and I'm sure that we can improve over what we currently have.
Thanks. As you know better than I, foreign policy is about trying to shape long-term developments. It's also about dealing with crises on a slow burner, but then immediate crises, particularly flashpoints that could actually bring about armed conflict. Those are the worst crises, as I remember. And today, unfortunately, we seem to have two such sort of flashpoints: the Eastern Mediterranean, Greece and Turkey with the military ships in close proximity. And we've had in the last couple of days this flare-up of fighting between Azerbaijan and Armenia in Nagorno-Karabakh. What can the EU do here to sort of de-escalate the situation? And what do you see the best opportunities for the EU diplomacy here?
Well, on Eastern Mediterranean is where we are really most engaged. And this has been a constant ever since the High Representative took office. The relationship with Turkey had been going maybe not in the best direction for the last years. We've seen greater disengagement and also a tendency on the Turkish side to develop policy lines that are no doubt interesting, but also challenging. And in the last years also, the tension in Eastern Mediterranean has risen considerably, and the European Union has been responding to that actually, and sending very clear messages to Turkey about the fact that drilling or exploring in waters over which Greece and Cyprus have established clear claims in terms of their economic exclusive zones is something that cannot be cannot be addressed militarily by Turkey and imposing their presence and supported by their navy. So we are having very intense discussions with Turkey. Turkey is an indispensable partner for the European Union. It occupies a key geographical position. It is a candidate country. It is an ally. And we have many common interests. But it is true that it has been following a policy line that raises questions, and that we have to really sit down and address. And all the efforts that we've been doing in the last months has been to relaunch that open dialogue with Turkey and look at all the elements of the relationship, be it the accession process, the customs union, visa liberalization issues, migration-related issues, and of course, external dimension of their policies, and certainly what is happening in Eastern Mediterranean and how are we going to manage an area that is key for European security and on which the rising of tensions should be avoided. I think that now we are seeing a dialogue being reestablished with Greece, and we welcome this very much. We would also hope that a dialogue will be established with Cyprus. We hope that we could even retake settlement talks. And I think that would be a key element in order to help bring down the tensions and to move towards lasting solutions. And this is the kind of work we're carrying out with very intensive diplomacy on the part of the High Representative, engaging with Turkey, but also with Greece and with Cyprus and with many other friendly countries.
What about Nagorno-Karabakh, very briefly, because I still have a few questions for you in the time we have left. Russia and Turkey seem to be the main actors there, Pedro, but is there a role that the EU can still usefully play?
Well, the High Representative has been active. He has been calling both ministers, both the Azerbaijan and the he has offered his good offices in terms to help support. Of course, we have the Minsk group and the OSCE efforts that we will also be supporting. He is talking to all the other players as well. Probably will be engaging with all of them shortly, trying to see how the European Union can help. We are an organization that is specialized in cooperation, and therefore, there would be no solution to the Azerbaijan and Armenian problem unless they understand that they have to reestablish cooperation amongst their people and try to find solutions, and we're ready to support those efforts. Yeah,
I certainly back you on that one. Pedro, the High Representative also has responsibility for the military and defense aspects, of course, of the European Union, and there's been a lot of calls there too for the EU to step up its efforts on security, on defence, on military cooperation. Those of us in Brussels like to play around with acronyms like PESCO and EDF, the different funds to produce common capabilities. Over the last year or so, a lot of the debate was about how much money would be put into these activities and whether the full funding levels would be there. But we've moved beyond that now. So what I'd like to ask you is what is actually happening in terms of the EU turning out real additional capabilities? Is PESCO working? Has the European Defence Fund really taken off? Are we going to see more integrated, more powerful European forces in the future which can uphold some of the missions beyond Europe's borders?
Well, I think we've established the most sophisticated cooperation mechanism for the development of defense capabilities that has ever been put in place amongst independent states. And PESCO is an incredible platform for cooperation, and EDF brings funds, even if not as much money as we expected and wanted, but it is the beginning of a process. And I think you have to look at this as the beginning, with all the right instruments that have been put, the tools, the platform for cooperation has been created. But not only the platform. When we launched PESCO, we said, this was back in 2017, we will not just launch a paper PESCO. We have to launch it with some projects already. And actually now we have 47 projects. And they cover issues ranging from training to development of medical common deployable facilities, to capabilities in space, maritime, cyber, land, a lot of projects on unmanned vehicles, be it aerial with the RPA, the maritime unmanned, terrestrial unmanned. Interesting, we have also a vessel project. I can't remember now what type of vessel it is, forgive me, but we do have.
There are 47 is a lot of projects to remember all at once.
Yeah. And we have also an armored vehicle project. So there is the beginning of a strong platform for developing defense capabilities and bringing real interoperability and lowering the costs and strengthening the industry of defense of Europe. And I think, you know better than I do that in 3 years you don't set up new capabilities.
No, never in with the armed forces. It often drags on for 20 or 30 years, although that's far too long by today's standards, of course.
But we have mechanisms of follow-up which are quite serious. We're ready to clean up projects that are not taking off and just put them at the side and concentrating on those that will bring greater efforts. And all this is being done also in perfect harmony and cooperation with NATO to ensure that we do not duplicate efforts, but that everything we do really serves the purposes of NATO as well as the individual member states and their cooperation within the European Union.
Thanks, Pedro. That sounds like good news, and so we'll follow that very closely in terms of the capabilities actually sort of coming off the production line. But not much time left, unfortunately. But one of the things I really wanted to ask you was about the impact of COVID-19 on this idea of European strategic autonomy. Another one of these buzz terms here in Brussels. And we did, you remember, because you participated very kindly, a security jam at Friends of Europe back in the spring, where we consulted thousands of people around the world on what they thought about European security developments. And one of the big conclusions was that the European Union has to become more self-reliant, not just in military equipment, but things like technology, supply chains, medical supplies, so it couldn't be sort of blackmailed or held hostage. What's happening there? Have you in the External Action Service taken a new look at European strategic autonomy to have more of a kind of technology economic flavor to it?
Yeah, well, I think you've almost answered the question yourself, Jamie, and I could subscribe to everything you've just said. But I think one interesting thing, when we started talking about strategic autonomy, people were focusing on military capabilities and defense or military action. And this created a bit of turmoil. And does this mean that the European Union is going at it alone and leaving NATO and whatever, and NATO is less relevant? And of course, the answer is no. And the answer now has been complemented by revealing that if we want security and we want defense, we have to go way beyond military. And here's where the European Union has a lot of added value and brings a lot of new instruments for cooperation to the table. And the normative power of the European Union in terms of standard setting for cyber, or in terms of what will be imported, what are the sensitive technologies that can be shared or that can be imported from others. I think that is a realization that has finally hit strongly the European Union. We're looking now at all kind of sensitive infrastructure, sensitive industries, COVID, as you rightly pointed out, has shown that we don't have an interest in relying excessively on supply lines for key products, medical products that we need for the protection of our population, and having this outside, that there are things that we may need to continue producing, that we have an interest, a strategic, a defense, security interest in continuing to produce. And I think this has all hit home. It's very much part of the hybrid type of world as well, and challenges that we're facing. And I think this will be very much highlighted in the document on the new work on the strategic compass that the European Union is currently carrying out. I'm afraid I've run out of time. Pleasure to respond to your questions.
Thanks, Pedro. No, indeed, we've run out of time. I only managed to get through half of the questions I wanted to ask you, but hopefully I can use that as a bait or as a hook to invite you back before too long so that we can complete the conversation. But it just shows that there is so much going on now, both in Europe's neighbourhood, all of those challenges. But what you've actually shown us is, fortunately, there's also a lot going on in Brussels, particularly in your service, the External Action Service, with a High Representative, in formulating more effective, more coherent answers from the European Union. So thanks in this rather gloomy time, Pedro, for giving us some reasons to be encouraged and to hope. Really delighted to have you with us today. Really grateful for your time. Thank you for joining Friends of Europe on this strategic conversation. And a bientôt. Hopefully see you again very soon on this platform.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
And thank you, of course, to all of our friends of Friends of Europe out there for watching today, and look forward to also joining you for another strategic conversation with another leading personality very soon too. Bye for now.